Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Learning Domains or Domains of Learning lesson or lecture, I guess. Oh, my screen is going crazy on me. So as usual, you can find these lectures or these PowerPoint presentations on Canvas. And so you can utilize that in any way that you like. And as always, stop if needed. So domains of learning, or also what we call is most times are the classifications of objectives. So on each of the lesson plan or any kind of plan that you have objectives for the time that you're going to spend with your participants. And so as you build those episodes, you always want to make sure that you have goals or objectives of that time spent with those individuals. Those are typically designed around what we call domains of learning. And what domains of learning are, kind of in a nutshell, is everything that a person can learn, literally everything that any individual can learn from birth to death until you stop learning, belongs in a domain. And there are 3 domains of learning. And so I'm going to introduce those to you right now. So the first one is what's called the psychomotor domain. We refer to it as the motor domain as well. The psychomotor and motor can be used interchangeably. It's kind of the easiest one, the easiest piece to delineate as far as if you're writing an objective, which piece it is. But it is the actual physical response or physical ability within a domain, within an objective, I'm sorry. So it's what the body does. So if you're going to put all of the things that you can learn into 3 categories, one of those categories is the physical one. The physical ability is what the body does. Obvious examples are throw, catch, skip, balance, leap, hop, strike, anything that is a physical skill or physical ability. If you or when you get to the lecture on skills or skill themes, it's literally the content that appears in that. So all the locomotor skills, all the manipulative skills, and all the non-manipulative skills belong in the psychomotor domain. The next one, super fast content today, is cognitive domain. And usually classroom teachers, or not classroom teachers, elementary school teachers are most familiar with this one. It's really the bread and butter of what it is that they do and what they teach and what they expect. And it is really kind of the knowledge and understanding that can be taught. And particularly in physical education, we do those in 2 different ways. And everyone should do this in 2 different ways. And really this K-2 is kind of just representative of a beginning level. You can be a beginner in college, in high school, in your 70s. I mean, it really kind of depends on where you are in the learning spectrum as far as what you're ready for cognitively. So for basically what we're going to kind of divide the elementary into, kind of show the differences in cognition and cognitive needs, are when you're talking about kinders and kinders through second graders, they're generally beginners in practically everything, motorically for sure. But cognitively, they are beginners. And so what we do with the K-2s is different than what we do through the 3 through 5s, and really kind of think of these 2 as levels of beginner and advanced, if you will. A beginner is ready for knowledge, just the basic kind of memorization or recitation of something. If you say you're going to do something like throw, and you're going to want everyone to concentrate on stepping with the opposite foot and getting your elbow up high and maybe follow through. And you talk about stepping with the opposite foot. Make sure that students are in activities where they're stepping with the opposite foot, following through the target. At the very end, you say, who can tell me what our first secret or our first cue was today? Step with the opposite foot, right? What is the second one? Keep your elbow up. That's just the knowledge or the remembering, reciting, those types of things. And that's for beginning learners. So basically, even if you had a college class, the very first day, you make sure everyone's doing the initial cues accurately. Then once they've moved past that beginning stage, they move into kind of they have the abilities to then process knowledge. If I know that I'm stepping with the opposite foot and I'm doing it, then I can start to talk about why and process why we do things. How does it affect the performance of a skill if it's done differently, or if it's changed, or if you're not able to do it. So what happens if I can't step with the opposite foot? What does that do to my throw? Why do we step with the opposite foot? And if we were in class, I'd ask you why, and it would take you a little while to come to it. But basically it's for force production. Obviously, have you ever tried to throw something far, stepping with the other foot, and accuracy, those types of things. So, but processing that helps people learn and understand, and you want to have them physically involved as well as cognitively engaged in almost everything. I always say that there's 99% of the time I do lessons, I have both of those components in there, physical and the motor and the cognitive. So I don't do anything without teaching. And I certainly, the cognitive piece is really important. So for beginners, no matter really what the age is, you work on knowledge, the cues, having the cues in there, reciting the cues, saying the cues, performing the cues, giving feedback on the cues, and then in the closure, discussing cues. Once everyone kind of has the skill and those cues, you move to more difficult pieces, more difficult activities. Now you're processing the cues and how they work, why we do things, and why is the most important question. Here's a cue, why do we do it? And kind of process those types of things. So when you are writing objectives, for those who will write objectives, you will have, the learner will be able to, and you need to make sure that you use proper terminology when you're writing these objectives. If you want someone to understand something in your class or in the time that you spend with them, you don't want to say the learner will be able to understand, or the learner will be able to, I want my students to understand the importance of stepping in opposition, stepping with the opposite foot. It is not measurable. You can't measure understanding. If they step with the opposite foot, that doesn't mean they understand the importance of it. So you have to find ways to measure cognition in observable ways. So you can't measure or understanding, but you can measure if they describe it. I don't know what sex yet. So the learner will be able to describe why it's important to step with the opposite foot. List the cues for the day. Identify the reasons we are accurate when throwing. So if you just think of those two things, as far as I want my students to understand the importance of stepping with the opposite foot, or I want my students to describe what happens when you step with the opposite foot, or describe what happens when you don't step with the opposite foot. That is a very different process and a very different end result. And therefore you're able to tell if someone really does understand through their demonstration of their completion, their indicating, their matching, naming, recalling, developing. All of those verbs can really show you observable results. The last domain is the affective domain. And so it is I call them the warm, soft fuzzies. And when I was first teaching, I didn't spend a tremendous amount of time. My goal in life was to make people skillful and make people knowledgeable. And I really didn't want to spend a lot of time on the affective domain because I was going to make everybody skillful and focus on that piece. And after several years, this is the shortened version of the story, but after several years of struggling and researching and buying behavior management books and spending, countless hours trying to figure out what am I doing wrong? What are my students doing wrong? Why can't I get this? I had a conversation with several professionals who said, well, what are you doing in the affective domain? And I probably was like, nothing. And hopefully I wasn't so as shocked as that response. But they said, well, you can't teach them to learn if they don't know how to work together. And I kind of took a step back and I really kind of focused on how do I teach them to work together? How do I teach them to cooperate in a setting where I can then do what I want to do? And so from that, I learned, I almost quit the profession, and thankfully I didn't. The next year I put in an affective, really almost 3 weeks in the very beginning, where I just focused on working together, cooperating, teamwork, appropriate winning and losing behaviors, which is huge, especially in, public school, in all settings, in the classroom, out of the classroom, in the gym, on the grass, on the blacktop, in order for them to work together and really kind of exhibit appropriate winning and losing behaviors to where that doesn't spiral out of control. You really have to talk about that and teach it. So here's the kind of overview. It's all of the feelings, attitudes, values, and social behaviors. So it's cooperating, teamwork, sporting behaviors. Usually people kind of old school terms are sportsmanship, but we just call it sport behaviors or sporting behaviors now, to take out kind of the gender piece there. So basically it is teaching people, how to cooperate in an environment where it's very dynamic and the cooperation is very needed to be productive. So helping, assisting, sharing, following, supporting, and how you're going to do that. And the biggest one is, one of the things that is highlighted predominantly is the exhibiting appropriate winning and losing behavior. So, understanding that losing in a game, certainly in physical education at recess and anything really isn't the end of the world, and it needs to kind of be prioritized. And we talk about these things as far as the affective domain. So a skill in the affective domain it's important to consider it as kind of equally to a cognitive or a motor skill. So for example, if I'm going to teach throwing, I'm going to talk about throwing. I'm going to introduce it. I'm going to put you in a lot of activities that require throwing. I'm going to give you feedback, and then we're going to talk about it in the closure. Affective skills, or skills that can be acquired in the affective domain, are no different. They are still skills. They are not byproducts. You don't learn how to cooperate by being on a team. Some people, we don't even know, for those of us who've been on teams forever, can't even pinpoint where we learned to be a good teammate or where we learned that we aren't a good teammate. It's hard to kind of establish a progression of how to be a good teammate, how to learn how to cooperate. But basically it's the same thing as a skill. So if you were going to teach throwing in that progression that I just listed, you're going to have to do the same thing for cooperating. Introduce cooperating in the lesson. It's the actual focus of a lesson. Introduce cooperating. Talk about what it looks like, what it sounds like, what it feels like. Put them in an activity where they must cooperate, and then discuss how it went. What went well, what didn't go well. I like to put them in something that is very, very challenging, that has a high failure rate, which sounds a little sadistic, if you will, but it requires cooperation to succeed. And then talk about how you can be successful, talk about how cooperation lent you to either doing well or not, and all of the pieces in that. So really the focus of that is cooperating, and that's an affective lesson. So without those things, it is very difficult to get a class to follow rules, to follow protocols, to work together. I mean, kids could spend an entire day arguing over rules, or they could learn how to cooperate with each other, I have a great plan for those of you who are going into education. All my liberal studies and movement education and child development students it's called the emergency action plan, and it is literally Rochambeau. So if a ball lands in, and you think it's out, or you had the purple ball and now someone else wanted it, it's the nuh-uh, it's mine, nuh-uh, it's mine. Instead of coming to you and spending all of your time and effort and mental space for that, you have any kind of argument that doesn't involve safety. They can Rochambeau that out. If you thought it was in and he thought it was out, you Rochambeau. The Rochambeau wins, and it is the equalizer of all problems. So always, I use it in the classroom. I use it on the field. I use it everywhere. And I call it the emergency action plan. I don't know why, it just stuck and it works. And so if students come up to me, I just say, okay, use your emergency action plan. And then I send them on their way. And again, unless there's safety issues, but usually it is not a factor. So yeah, and then, of course, taking turns, waiting politely, patiently, being supportive. Those are things that people don't necessarily, we know adults who don't do those things well. And so, of course, if we're talking about public school children, there's a place for that. And certainly for those of you who are teaching elementary school in general, this is wide open. Taking turns, being patient, those types of things are things that we have to talk about, and talk about what it looks like, and practice it, put them in opportunities where they have to practice it. So those are the domains of learning. And I hope everything is going well with you.